Welcome back. This is ATV Live and Health Talk is the show. My name is Ogaga Ekama and I'm your host. I have with me Dr. Chijindu Dewigwe and we are considering sickle cell anemia. A lot has been said on this topic, sickle cell anemia. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, please do well to check them on the channel and do well to subscribe, turn on notifications so you always be notified whenever a new video drops. So, Doc, you've taken us through a lot what sickle cell anemia is, the types of sickle cell disease, causes, risk factors, complications, symptoms, diagnosis, and now prevention. Now, can it be prevented?
By all means. By all means, we have a saying in medicine, prevention is better than cure. So the prevention basically is every human being walking on earth, rather walking in Nigeria, Africa, in this part of the world should know their genotype. You have cases where adults come to the hospital, full-grown adults, 30-something-year-olds, and ask, okay, so sir, what's your genotype? And he says, oh, my mother told me I'm AA.
Really?
Yes. Or you see someone, a married woman who is pregnant, she comes to the hospital for antenatal and tell, okay, madam, what's your genotype? Say, I don't know. What's your husband's genotype, madam? I don't know. And you're like,
I think I was almost guilty. I was guilty to a certain age, actually. I was. So, but go ahead.
So every person should do a genotype test. You can walk into a lab and request for a genotype. You shouldn't wait till you have to get married. For some people, it was a very difficult. I know someone whose marriage,
Intending marriage,
or, had to be dissolved, or they had to pass ways because of genotype. And this whole thing of, oh, I know I'm AA. And then another thing that causes it is, when you're trying to enter into the university, they do some medicals for you, and then the university they also conduct genotype tests. But the accuracy, we really can't. It's not always very accurate because you're doing for a large number of people. When you're trying to do for 500 people, so there's bound to be a lot of errors. So running with that particular genotype test, I don't think is very advisable. So please, you should actually walk into a lab and go do a genotype. If there's some, and then also you can ask your parents. What are your genotypes? So if your father is AS and your mother is AS, or your both parents are AA and you're AS, I think you should go do a HPLC. That is I'm not going to say it. I am not going to say it. But if you feel there's any actually we advise every adult to actually do it a HPLC so that you're very certain.
Yeah, I can relate, but mine wasn't with the genotype thing. It was with blood group.
Okay.
So I think growing up, I used to ask my parents my blood group, and they told me, I think, something like that. I believe that until I entered the university, and I did the first test myself because I'm a science student. I studied physiology, so we're doing this blood grouping thingy, and that's when I did it. I was like, all those were for how many years of my life I believed I was blood group O, and I saw like B positive. I'm like, is this my blood group? I had to call them. I told them like, this is it. So I can relate when we are walking and we're saying, my parents told me this. So that was the first time. Then I had to do another one again in hospital, and that was when I confirmed that I didn't have the blood group.
In fact, I know someone who almost had marital issues. In marriage, they got married. So his first son kept falling ill. They had to go to the hospital, find out what the problem is. And then they told him his son was a sickle, and he said that's impossible. Most likely his wife stepped out. It was going to cause a very huge problem. So the doctor told them, okay, both of you should go do another genotype test. And they found out they were both AS.
Wow.
This was like after how many years of marriage? Do you understand? So
the way to prevent it is to do the test, carry out the test. Yes, and
please, if you're in love with someone, you both of you are AS or something. I don't know. Maybe if you come to the hospital and you see children who are sicklers, who are crying in pain, maybe to touch your heart, because I don't think any parent would want their child to go through that kind of pain. In fact, it is said that that pain is almost similar to labor pain.
Okay, so now, would the genotype AS and SC or AS and AC see will that also lead to getting the SS genotype?
AS and SC, yes, they can have the SS too.
AS and SC. What about AS and AC?
AS and AC, you'd have the SC genotype. The SC genotype, you can still have crisis, but not as much as that of the SS. But of course, we wouldn't advise it. Just dance away from the whole sickle cell disease.
So can SC and AC genotype get married?
No, SC and AC.
AC.
You still have SC as a
which
child,
can also
which
have
can
crisis.
also have a crisis. Yes.
So of course the cocky ones are the people that have
Oh my God.
They can ask maybe at the point of proposal, we're like, okay, so what's the genotype again? So
I had a classmate, he told me, he didn't tell me, directly. We heard him saying, I'm O positive. I cannot beg a woman to marry me.
spec. I'm still on the lighter note. I remember once upon a time a friend was having a conversation. I was like, you are AA and she's AA. People are wicked. People are just wasting genotype. Go and look for AS. But that's a lighter note. So now we've talked about prevention and let's talk about management and treatment. Okay, let's start with, so I'll throw the two questions at you, then you pick the management one first. Can it be managed? If yes, how? Then the most important one to me, can it be treated? If yes, how? Okay. So let's start with the management.
Okay, so the management. In medicine, we have the symptomatic management and then we have the definitive management. Symptomatic is managing the symptoms that come with it. And then definitive is like the ogapatapata of them, or permanent cure, right? So before that, I would like to talk about the triggers for crisis. There are some things that can trigger crisis in a sickle cell patient. One, dehydration. So we advise them to drink lots of water. You have to carry a water bottle around with you. We live in the tropics, so the weather can be quite hot. Also, extremes in temperature. The weather is too hot or the weather is too cold. Sometimes when rain beats them, they come down with crisis. Or when the weather gets too hot, they stay under the sun for so long, they come down with crisis. Infections, so we try to sleep under a mosquito net, try to clear stagnant bushes around you, because we live in a malaria endemic region, so you don't come down with malaria. If people are sick around you, just try to protect yourself in any way so you don't get sick, because your sickness can trigger the crisis. There are sometimes extremes of emotion. I've heard of people maybe who have heartbreaks and then it triggers. Yes, it triggered the crisis. Yes, the human body is quite a beautifully complex model. So the management now. So when they come in the crisis, so okay, with these trigger points I've mentioned, so basically avoiding these things that are the triggers can help you manage yourself. Then for people who come with full-blown crisis, maybe we give them pain medication to alleviate the pain. We give them IV fluids, intravenous fluids to rehydrate them, Then we give them some medications like folic acid to help build up their folate levels. We give them medication like hydroxyurea. Hydroxyurea helps to preserve the fetal hemoglobin that is still remaining, so they don't all transit to adult hemoglobin, to protect them and help reduce the number of crises that they have. So that is for the management. Now for the cure, in quotes, the cure is the bone marrow transplant. And of course, it's not very common and it needs big bucks. And unfortunately, most of the people that have sickle cell anemia are people from the lower socioeconomic region or background. So how many of them have eaten well that afford bone marrow transplants. Do you understand? So there's been cases where bone marrow transplants, and then but of course, a bone marrow transplant has its own complications and attendance risk and all of that. So yes, that's a definitive cure.
So now, just on the bone marrow transplant, because I remember earlier you talked about I asked why the pain or whatsoever is majorly affects the longer bones, and you said that's where the bone marrows are. So in the human body, I want to believe there is more than one bone marrow.
Okay, the bone, just like meat, when you're eating meat,
Mm.
when you break it open, you see the marrow. So there are areas where there is an abundance of bone marrow. So in those bone marrows, that's where the blood cells are produced. So in the bone marrow transplant, you're basically transfusing them with newer bone marrow.
So where do you get does someone
Yes, a donor.
a donor?
Yes, sometimes it could be their sibling. There are extensive tests that could be done, just like kidney transplants, heart transplant, lung transplants. You need to be sure that they are compatible, that there's not going to be a reaction somewhat. You get so.
So let me get now. So the thigh bone is the femur, right?
Yes.
So will the transplant be done only at the femur, or you can take it to?
I don't know the intricacies of that. I think the specialists know where they concentrate that on. Yeah.
All right. So even as we begin to wind down, now you've told us about the management, how it can be managed, and you talked about the treatment. So what would be your last words to people that already have the AS genotype, or people that already have the SS genotype? So I want you to speak to these two categories, the AS genotype and the SS.
Okay, well, I'll start with the SS genotype. We as much as we can, we do not refer to them as sicklers. We refer to them as warriors, sickle cell warriors, because they go through a whole lot. It can be very emotionally tasking, it can be financially tasking, it can affect every sphere of their lives, including finding love. Yes. So my word of advice to them, or shout out to them, is keep being strong. We recognize you and we are rooting for you. Definitely, I am rooting for you. Then for those with the AS genotype, my word of advice is please try to lessen the burden, on the warriors already. Let's not bring in more people into the world who would come to suffer this same case. As much as you can, know your genotype and marry someone who is genotypically, compatible with you.
All right. I would also like to add, for those persons that don't necessarily want to get married before they have kids, but it's a little bit tricky now.
Yes.
So it means, especially for people that, it sounds off, but it's actually the fact, for people that want to have one night stands. So you meet a lady for a guy now, and like, I'm AS, sorry, please, are you AS? So those kind of situations. So it just goes to tell that you have to be careful.
Yes. I don't think anybody actually wants to have a child from a one night stand. But
it happens.
Happen.
Oh, is it accident? Oh well, I get your point. But so I love to add that. So just be careful when especially if you're not married and you want to indulge in sexual intercourse. Maybe you just have a girlfriend or a sexual partner. Please know your sexual partner's genotype if you people are interested in bringing a child or children into this world. And that's what we're pulling the plug on today's episode of Health Talk. Thank you very much, Dr. Chijindu Dewigwe, for your time and sharing your knowledge with us. I really do appreciate it. I love your smile.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, that's all on today's episode of Health Talk. Thank you so much for your time. Do well to subscribe to this channel, and of course, you know that it will be very, very nice of you to share this video. It is I, Ogaga Ekama, thanking you so much for your time.